What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla buying a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down some big news that came out for Nvidia and Berkshire Hathaway that could affect the whole markets. Not to mention big data that's coming out for tomorrow. But let me just mention that I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. Anyways, for Tesla, we're on a bit of a downtrend right now. If you look at the last couple of weeks, Tesla's been making lower highs and lower lows, continuing to fall and fall and fall. On our daily chart right now, we have this 205 support at our 200 EMA. And if Tesla were to lose this, we'll be looking for a bigger dump all the way down towards the 190s, in my opinion. But if we do end up breaking past 215, Tesla could try to rebound. So the question is, what's looking more probable? What is the market going to likely do? Unfortunately, we have a lot of negative news that's come out. So that does give the bears a bigger edge tomorrow. But make sure you watch some levels just for confirmation to determine which direction we're going in. So as a reminder, the first thing I want to mention is that we have a lot of important data coming out for tomorrow, which is going to be Monday, August 5th, 2024. Now, we have the ISM services data coming out later on, but the first piece of data at 9:45 is kind of minor. We have the S&P Global Composite PMI and Global Services PMI. Might cause some volatility, but like I said before, the main time to watch for volatility would be 10 o'clock a.m., 30 minutes after the market ends up opening. We have the ISM Services PMI, employment, new orders, and prices all coming out. Now, remember, on Thursday, the data came out from manufacturing, and the manufacturing sector was very weak, showing more and more signs of contraction, and the market dumped. On Friday, the unemployment numbers came out, the market dumped. So for tomorrow, we have the ISM services numbers coming out. The services sector might not be as strong, so it's still at risk for the markets, in my opinion. So be careful with this coming out. Look for a big move at 10 o'clock a.m., and there is a risk of some downside as a result of that. On top of this, there's a lot of news coming out that Warren Buffett has raised Berkshire's cash level to a record $277 billion after slashing the stock holdings. This is some very, very big news. They've got rid of a lot of their Apple positions, they've got rid of many different positions out there, and they're holding a record amount of cash, getting ready to buy those dips. Now, this is very important news. Warren Buffett has been once again selling a lot of positions, at least over the last quarter. So that could be very, very interesting to see how things end up developing, at least from here. And on top of this, we have some negative news that's come out. Unfortunately, Nvidia has a big news that came out for today. They are likely delaying their next gen Blackwell AI chips. And that's actually a very, very big implication for the sector. So they're delaying their next gen shipments by at least a couple of months. They're saying massive shipments may not take place until early 2025. And that's huge news. They're also saying that they're delaying this because of a potential design flaw that they found late in the production process. And this is huge news as well, just pretty negative, if anything. The B200 chips were set to replace the very popular H100 chips. So with this slowing down, this is going to have a big effect on the semiconductor industry and possibly lead to some downside. So not the best of news for Tesla and many other companies that depend on them, for AMD and others out there. This is some negative news that might cause some volatility tomorrow. On top of this, when it comes to earnings, as a reminder, we have Berkshire Hathaway announcing earnings very soon on Monday, not to mention Palantir and Lucid. Then for Tuesday, we have Uber and a few others. Wednesdays, when we have Shopify and Robinhood and Walt Disney. And then Thursdays, when we have just very, very minor ones like Unity, Paramount, and SoundHound. And Friday is also going to be very minor with Nikola and just a couple of others like that. So we have some important earnings coming out for Monday and Tuesday. Even Wednesday, we'll have some. And then everything else will be more minor for Thursday and Friday. In terms of other pieces of news, I just want to mention that there's still a lot of things going on around the world involving the Middle East. Not the best of news, so we're just going to watch and see if anything escalates. Hopefully, nothing happens, but there's still some risk without looking at the data sources. And then with all the data that's been coming out, the real-time SAMRUL recession indicator has been going off. This is because of the shift in unemployment. This is suggesting that we are entering a recession. Now, it's not a guarantee, but it is just another indicator showing economic contraction, which is more negative for the markets. As far as Tesla goes, there's been some news about how they're reiterating their $500 million Dojo supercomputer plans in Buffalo, New York. So that's good, at least for Tesla moving forward. It's going to help them with a lot of improvements to be made to their different processes. And also, there's been some more talk about how they've signed a new agreement in Buffalo that extends their commitment to operate the Giga New York for 5 more years until 2034. So that's, once again, good news for them. They're increasing their job commitment over there, and they're continuing to grow quite a bit. But this is not necessarily new news. This is actually old news that's being reiterated. So I just wanted to call that out. That's something Tesla's been talking about. Volume is currently at about 82 million, and short volume is just kind of flat right now around this range. On top of this, Cantor Fitzgerald gave Tesla a neutral rating, and Truist Securities gave them a hold rating. Right now, the price price ratio is dipping because Tesla's losing some strength. There's not really much else that's going on that's too new. So now the question is what's going to happen with all the different charts. I just want to focus on that for the rest of the video. So I am concerned, guys, about all this news involving Nvidia, Berkshire Hathaway, and also the data that's been coming out. Going into tomorrow, I think that from a technical standpoint, there might be an attempt to try to rebound a little bit on Tesla to retest the 210 area. But to bounce, you want to see Tesla break past 215. If we break 215, we could look for a bounce on Tesla to 219 to 220. If we fail to get to 215, we reject. Watch our support around this 205 area. If we lose that, I think Tesla's going all the way down to 200 flat, if not the 190s. So you want to be very careful. I also called out over the weekend on the 4-hour time frame. We have a very, very nice looking symmetrical structure. So if you zoom out like this on Tesla, you'll see how symmetrical the chart is looking. So if you draw like a line in the middle, you guys can see this is like a mirror image right over here. The left is resembling the right side. And then this could suggest that our key supports in this 194 area. And we do have a flag that could be forming that also kind of opens doors for that. So that's something else that's worth noting, at least for Tesla moving forward, that we have this potential flag. Now, in my personal opinion, I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla tries to rebound a little bit tomorrow to retest this 210 to 212 area. It is possibly rebound just a bit, but with all the negative news involving Nvidia, involving Apple, not to mention global events and data, by the time we get to about 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, there is going to be a risk of downside if we get bad data. And the reason why there's a risk of that is because of how manufacturing numbers have been looking, especially on Thursday. So manufacturing numbers were weak. Services might do something very similar. So this could lead to more risks of downside, especially because Tesla has lost its 200 EMA and the trend is more bearish, right? We're making lower highs, lower lows, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. So Tesla could dip lower, in my opinion. I think there's a risk of that. We might rebound in the morning, and then after the data comes out and such, we might start to dip even lower, and that's the most likely possibility. Look for a retest of 210 to 212. If we were to, close above 215, then yes, I would favor a bounce. Instead, I will shift, but I don't see that happening. I think we favor just like the 210 to 212 area, and then possibly rejection. If we end up losing 205, that's your confirmation, guys. Tesla's going to be dumping. So get ready just to be safe and keep this in the back of your guys' minds. For SPY, we are also looking more bearish on the chart, making lower highs and lower lows. But whether or not we dump depends on some key levels. The chart is very simple, by the way. So we have this structure that's looking very distributive, especially as we have like a head and shoulders forming on SPY right here. And then if we do end up losing 528, I think we could be dipping not just about 524, but all the way down towards this 519 to 520 area. 520 could come if we lose 528. If we rebound and we manage to break above 533, I'd be looking for 535 to 536. Break 536 or close above it, and we favor 541. So make sure you keep those levels in mind. Okay. So what do I think is more likely? I think that the odds favor this trying to rebound, maybe trying to retest 533 in the pre-market, and then we'll see if that breaks or not. If we do break this, we could go a little higher. If we reject, depending on the data, we're going to likely start dipping back down to 528. If that breaks, we turn bearish. From a technical standpoint, we look more bearish, and with all the bad news involving Warren Buffett, involving Nvidia, my guts tells me the downside is looking more prominent. So we might see a little rebound in the morning, especially as we approach the big data, and then there's going to be a risk of a rug pull back down to the 528, if not lower area. I think there might be more downside coming. So just be careful, guys. I do favor the rug pull, and if 528 breaks, look for a bigger drop into the mid 520s. There is a risk of that, so we'll just have to see just to be safe. For ES, we have a very, very similar structure, head and shoulders like structure, of course. And then we also happen to have this key support at 5,340, excuse me. If we lose this, we're dipping all the way down to the 5,200s. If we bounce off this, you'll be looking for resistance around this imbalance in the 5380s, if not higher. My guts tells me this might rebound a bit, then we get a big rejection, and if we lose support, we'll be dipping even lower. So I favor the downside. I think that that's more likely to happen depending on the levels we break. If we break 5400, we're bullish. If we lose 5340, we're bearish. My gut tells me we might rebound a little bit into the 5360s and then maybe get a rejection, start dipping lower. That's the most likely possibility in my opinion. For SPX, we're barely holding our 200 EMA at 5,300. If we were to lose that, I'll be looking for basically the very low 5200s, a big rug pull as we have a head and shoulders. If we rebound, you want to break past 53.6. If you break that, then yes, we could bounce. My gut tells me it's going to try to retest this gap, maybe try to fill it and then end up rejecting. I think we might end up seeing a little bit of a drop. So look for a rebound and then a drop as the most likely possibilities. But just to be safe, make sure you watch your levels. I'm concerned about Nvidia. We've been making lower highs and lower lows, continuing to downtrend. Watch this resistance at 108 and also at 112. We might try to get into the 110s, but then we'll see if we get a rejection on Nvidia. If we end up losing 102.5, we'll look at 100. That's going to be our last point of support because one concern for Nvidia is this. The daily, if we lose 100, we have this big gap to fill all the way down to about 95, and we have a double top, so this favors the downside. However, we could get a temporary bounce into the 110s, and then we could see that move to the downside. It's a very, very strong possibility. Okay, so it depends on a lot of different factors. We might rebound a little bit, but then there's this big gap to fill down here. We might get a rejection off this bad news, so just be very careful. A big red flag for the markets is Bitcoin. We're dumping right now on Bitcoin. We're barely at 58,000. If we lose the 56,000 area, or 57,000, I'm sorry, we'll be going all the way down to about 56,500. We also have resistance around this 59,000 area. So I think this is looking more bearish and favors the downside, and that could be more bearish for the markets. For the QQQ, we're also looking more bearish. We've been dipping quite a bit in terms of our trend. However, it depends on 444. That's going to be our key support. That's also previous support historically. So if we lose 444, we're going to be dumping. If we break 452, we turn back up. My gut tells me we might rebound a little bit, retest the low 450s and reject and start dipping down to 444. If that fails us, we'll be looking for an even bigger drop all the way down to the lower 440s. But I favor a little rebound and a dump all the way down towards 444, and if that fails us, we're going all the way down towards 440. Watch and see if that ends up being the case. We have this head and shoulders like structure, and we're still looking pretty weak in my opinion. So the head and shoulders looks more bearish. We could rebound and then reject. That looks more probable to me. If we lose 444, that's your confirmation of downside. If we break 452, we could try to rebound, but this is favoring the downside. In terms of the trend, there's no sign of a bounce, so just be careful. I'm also concerned about Apple. Apple has a head and shoulders. Warren Buffett dumped, almost half his position, and a bunch of stuff has been going on. So if we lose 216, look for 213. If 213 breaks, we're going to get a big rug pull. If we break past 225, we could try to bounce with the head and shoulders and the fact that we rejected despite getting decent earnings. That makes me a little concerned that this might be retesting 216 tomorrow. And then if that fails, this will be dipping lower. So this looks a little bit more bearish to me. I think we might dip a little bit on Apple, if not get a bigger dump if we lose 212. For Palantir, we're looking more bearish. If we manage to break past 25, look for 25.6. That's going to be our gap resistance. If we end up failing to hold the 24.5 area, we're going to be looking for a dump all the way down to the 23s. My gut tells me it may pop and drop and look for more downside. That's looking more probable in my opinion. For Supermicro, we look more bearish. We're on a bit of a downtrend right now. We are going to favor downside after the Nvidia news that came out. We could retest this resistance at 650. We also have earnings coming out soon. But just be careful, guys. If it does retest the 640 area, we could still reject and continue to dump because this chart still looks more bearish and it does favor downside even as we approach earnings. So a rebound and a dump is very probable. We might end up retesting our low from Friday all the way down into the very low 600s, if not the 580s. We might rebound first and then get a rejection. So just be careful looking at the trend. SoFi is looking more bearish. We need to reclaim 6.8 to turn back up. If we fail to do so, look at 6.6 as support. If that fails us, we're dipping all the way down to much lower levels like 6.33. For the IWM Russell 2000, we have a double top leg structure. We're looking more bearish. Look at resistance at 210. Look at support where this imbalances at 203. My guts tells me that if we don't reclaim 210, we're going down to 203. If we end up losing 207, that's more confirmation of 203. There is a risk of downside on the IWM unless we reclaim the 210. If we reclaim 210, we could bounce, but just be careful. The chart looks more bearish. For AMD, we're at risk of downside. Look at resistance around this 138 area. If we reject, we'll be dipping back down towards 129. If 138 does not break, then we could be dipping all the way down to lower levels like 125. So I do see a risk of downside on AMD looking at the current trends. For ARM, we're looking more bearish. There's a big downtrend right over here. We're at this support right here around this 110 area. If we manage to reclaim this 116 area, we could rebound. Otherwise, we remain bearish. This chart is favoring a little rebound and a bit of a dip lower. If we lose 110, look for a bigger drop to the lower 100s, just for confirmation. For Coinbase, we look a little bit more bearish. We have kind of like a head and shoulders like structure. I would say that I'd be looking at support right here around this 194 area. If 200 breaks, look for 194. If we hold 200, we could rebound towards 210. But looking at this structure, we look more bearish with the double top. This favors downside, in my personal opinion. So if we lose 200, look at 194, and if that breaks, we're going down to 188. This chart is once again favoring the downside. So we'll be very, very careful on Coinbase. This is favoring more of a dip, and then we'll just have to see how things end up going. For Amazon, we're looking more bearish. There's a bit of a dip coming, kind of like a very, very weak structure. But despite weak metrics, I just want to mention that we dipped really, really low already, down 8.7%. So we might see a little bit of consolidation tomorrow before more potential downside. The chart still looks more bearish, but I think that with the wicks forming, the wicks over here, I think we're just going to consolidate in around the 168 area and then maybe see more downside later. Meta's looking more bearish to me. I think that it is possible we retest 482. If we lose that, there's going to be a big dump coming to at least 474, if not lower. If we hold 482, we could rebound back up towards 488. If that breaks, we're going to bounce. This chart is favoring downside, though. 482 or lower, that looks more favorable to me. For Microsoft, we're looking more bearish. There's a bit of a downtrend right here. We have resistance around this 410 area and also at 415. We have support all the way down here around this 405 area. If that breaks, we'll be dipping all the way down towards much lower levels like 400 or below. So this chart's looking more bearish, especially on the 4-hour time frame. We're continuing to dip. And I think that this favors downside all the way down to 400, if not lower levels. So we still look more bearish on Microsoft, in my opinion. I don't see really signs of a nice bounce yet. We could rebound a little bit to retest this 410 zone and then reject, but this still favors downside all the way down to 400, in my opinion. For Google, we look more bearish as well. We're on a bit of a downtrend, continuing to fall. I think that if we reclaim 170, we could bounce. If not, we're going to likely dip all the way down towards 165, and this chart's favoring the downside. For others out there, we have DJT trying to rebound. We could retest 30, 30.64 in my opinion. We'll see if we reject off that or not, but look for a little bounce on it, a little rebound. The VIX is trying to break out right now. If the VIX were to break out and continue like this, this is going to favor even more downside. It still is looking bullish, so this favors that the market's on a big downtrend. The 10-year Treasury yield is dipping because of the Fed being a little bit more dovish, but I don't really expect that to affect the market too much. But I do want to call that out because it just gives us more insights that the Fed is becoming a little bit more dovish. But the dollar has kind of like a double top leg structure, is looking kind of weak right here. We'll see if the dollar bounces or not. If the dollar continues to fall, this could signal that the market's going to bottom in a few days. So we'll see. But like I said before, despite how the dollar is looking, the market as a whole still favors the downside. So for Tesla, be careful with all this Nvidia news coming out. Nvidia is a big partner for Tesla. So we'll see how things go. We're losing structure right here. We got to try to reclaim 215 to bounce on Tesla. If we don't do so, we're going to favor the downside, in my personal opinion. So with that being said, the trend is clearly more bearish on Tesla. We're making lower highs and lower lows. If we don't reclaim 215, expect more downside and do what you guys have to do. Thank you all so much for listening. I'll see you guys very soon tomorrow before the market opens to report how the data is looking, and we'll see how the market ends up looking. Don't forget, there's a lot of news and tensions around the world, especially in the Middle East. That's going to have an effect on the markets if something big were to happen, at least for the short term. So we'll see how things go. Let's hope for peace and hope for the best. And with that being said, please have a great day, have a great evening, have a great night wherever you are. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, if it is Sunday, wherever you guys are around the world. And I just hope for the best for everyone. So stay strong, guys, no matter what happens. I know the US is in a very, very tough position economically, and this will have a big effect on your guys' lives. But stay strong no matter what. Remain positive, never give up, and I'll see you guys very soon on the next one. Thanks again, and peace out.